We say that we could never kill another human being. We say that killing is immoral, unlawful, and barbaric. So then why do people kill? Of course, there are numerous internal and external factors. But more specifically, how can we take seemingly normal people and turn them into mass murderers? And not any type of murder. Genocide.
On December 9, 1948, the United Nations adopted the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide,
which defines genocide as any act committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group.
Genocide is simply an extreme end of a process that happens quite often, and that revolves around our natural human tendencies. One of these tendencies is for us to separate into groups. There are two groups present, the in-group and the out-group. The in-group has the tendency to judge members of their own group more positively, while at the same time judging members of other groups more harshly. This causes one to see the members of their group as more diverse, while the members of the out-group are perceived as all very similar, and somewhat less, through the out-group homogeneity effect.
And if the out-group is seen as a threat, then the in-group will defend itself against them. These factors cause underlying tension among the two groups, fostering prejudice and discrimination. For example, in former Yugoslavia, before it split up, the Serbians and the Bosnians were fine, because they saw themselves as us. When it split up, it became Bosnians versus Serbians. When one side did one thing, anything, the other side felt like they were being threatened.
Monolithic societies such as Germany before World War II are more likely to support genocide and mass murder.
While in all genocides, these basic psychological processes are similar,
as are the events that catalyze them. Professor Newman of Syracuse University explains,
"Nothing happened at a time of tumult or chaos of Germany between the wars. Things were very unstable. People were unhappy. Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, where the genocide of the Armenians took place. This took place after the beginning of World War I, when things were not going well for the Ottomans in Rwanda. There had just been a coup. There was sort of a civil war going on. So, these things happen when people sense that something bad is happening. Things are out of control. We have problems. And when that happens, people want explanations.
So instead of Germany's government explaining the results of World War I as their fault,
and as a compilation of a series of poorly made decisions, instead of blaming the system, they blamed the Jews. People believe this because of the phenomena called Occam's razor, which detests that people are receptive to simple explanations. Scapegoating is a simple explanation with a fairly simple solution. Eliminate the outgroup.
Authoritarian genocidal leaders such as Slobodan Milosevic,
Saddam Hussein of Iraq, Pol Pot of Cambodia, and Adolf Hitler of Germany come into power because they convince others that the outgroup poses a threat to the in-group's basic human needs, such as the need for security and a feeling of effectiveness and control. But how do people become so easily convinced? One reason is because the genocidal leaders strategically choose which group to scapegoat. As Professor Leonard Newman explained,
if some government or some group is going to try to convince you that those people are the problem, those people have to be killed, those people are working behind the scenes to undermine us, we have to kill them for our own safety. It sounds terrible to say, but it has to be plausible to people in some way. Now, of course, it's not true, but you have to be able to sell them a story, and it's not going to work unless it's a group of people that is already considered maybe smart enough or successful enough or powerful enough so that, they could do it.
Institutionalized discrimination plays a huge role in enhancing the devaluation and fear of the outgroup. This includes a foot-in-the-door type approach. But in this case, it means that the in-group slowly increases the severity of the discrimination towards the out-group until it becomes acceptable to kill them. Beginning minor requests or offensives include hate propaganda, often where members of the out-group are equated with animals, vermin, insects, or diseases. In Rwanda, the Tutsis were referred to as inyenzi or cockroaches to heighten the differences between the Hutus and the Tutsis. Another part of this is making the in-group seem superior. For example, Hitler used propaganda to promote the Germans as the master race. The next step of the foot-in-the-door approach is the classification and symbolization, which leads to the dehumanization of the outgroup. This is seen when Nazi Germany enforced laws forcing Jews to wear a yellow badge bearing the Star of David, and when the Khmer Rouge forced the people of the eastern zone of Cambodia to wear a blue scarf. Discrimination was also present regarding the denial of citizenship to the Rohingya Muslim minority in Burma. These actions heightened the differences between the in-group and out-group and led to group polarization, as well as groupthink. The alternative soon becomes to kill. As Professor Tyndale explains,
when you put people into a situation and there's obviously a benefit to their group, giving them a chance, then they will perceive this as okay because it's for us.
This is what's going to bring us back to power. This is what will make us proud again. And it's a powerful motive.
So what makes people conform and not question these inhumane genocidal strategies?
Why is the bystander effect so present?
Essentially, it is easier to conform than it is to object. As Professor Tyndale explains,
as soon as someone steps in, then you might be more likely to step in. But if no one is stepping in, then everyone says, well, maybe I'm not supposed to. Then you add danger to it. And in Germany, it was like, you could be putting your life at risk by trying to defend Jews in your neighborhood. Or some people did it, but it was, rare and usually underground.
In the 1950s, Solomon Asch, American psychologist, conducted a conformity experiment in which he found that conformity increases when the group has at least 3 people, the group is unanimous, one admires the group's social status and attractiveness, one has made no other prior commitment to any response, others in the group observe one's behavior, one's culture strongly encourages respect for social standards. Other factors that impact people's willingness to conform include normative social influence and informational social influence. In the process of conformity, one becomes de-individuated, which makes it easier for the person to commit evil acts. Conformity and obedience go hand in hand. Stanley Milgram, a psychologist at Yale University, conducted an experiment focusing on the conflict between obedience to authority and personal conscience. Through this experiment, Milgram discovered that obedience is highest when the person giving the orders was close at hand and was perceived to be a legitimate authority figure. The authority figure was supported by a prestigious institution. The victim was depersonalized or at a distance, even in another room. There were no role models for defiance.
A common thread in genocides is that the state
employs tactics to encourage people to diffuse their responsibility. Leaders such as Hitler segmented tasks by breaking up the process of mass murder into smaller jobs so that no one individual has the responsibility for the entire process. With all of these factors present, are the perpetrators really responsible for their actions? While power of the group really can and often does consume the individual, Professor Newman explains that this is a completely conscious process.
You maybe start doing with something else. You first start by tolerating injustice. Then maybe you passively participate in injustice. But at each stage, you have to justify to yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I allowing this? And an easy way to justify it is they deserve it. But if you conclude that they deserve it, then I guess you can torment them without much guilt. So even genocidal killers have to try to convince themselves that what they're doing is okay.
Professor Tyndale explains,
in essence, that any thinking human being can evaluate a certain behavior they're about to do and decide or not to perform that behavior. So in the final analysis, yes, they were in situations where they could have seen the implications of what they were doing and said no.
Genocide is a slow, systematic process that requires an in-depth evaluation of one's society's needs and what they perceive as a threat. Social psychology can help us make sense of the behavior of people who plan, participate in, or passively observe genocide, and help us to better understand the strategies that genocidal organizations use to take advantage of social instincts hardwired into humans.